Will you possibly kill enough time for roughly 15 minutes while being both entertained, educated, and maybe even get slightly depressed? Will Matt McMuscles reveal the problems, both creative and financial, that plagued the most high-profile anime adaptation of all time, Dragon Ball Evolution? Find out on the next episode of What Happened? Dragon Ball Evolution defeated. Okay, so we're doing this one, huh? Okay, all right. Let's burn some muscle. Dragon Ball Z is pretty big in the world of anime. In fact, it's pretty big in terms of media in general, and I'd be surprised if you haven't heard of it. In the early 2000s, it was bolstered even further outside of Japan with the booming popularity of various dubs it received the world over.
It's over 9,000!
Tons of merchandise, and most importantly of all, GT Final Bout. Now, despite the manga and anime having been finished for years, it wasn't long before the money-sniffing noses of 20th Century Fox executives caught wind of the fact that blonde, spiky hair and screaming a lot was popular with the kids. Thus, they optioned the movie rights from Toei Animation and Dragon Ball creator Akira Toriyama, and then nothing at all. Remember, this was back in 2002 when Fox had announced they had acquired the rights and registered a movie domain, but it took them a further 7 more years until DB Evolution finally dragon rushed into movie screens across the planet Earth. However, rather than that same Earth giving it its hope and its energy, it instead gave it apathy and derision until it simply cratered into the ground. Now, why that 7-year gap, you ask? Well, a few reasons, but really only one reason. Fox couldn't find a director that was free, affordable, and gave a shit about Dragon Ball. This search to get a creative team together was an arduous one, with some wild names being thrown around at the time, including, but not limited to, Robert Rodriguez, who is busy down at the old Spy Kids factory, Zack Snyder, and most unbelievably of all, George Lucas, who was actually being courted since he had a working relationship with Fox, which it would have been just so mind-blowing. There would have been so many scenes of Goku and Chi-Chi just sitting down on couches talking. Please tell me George at least filmed some test scenes. I'm begging for this to still somehow happen. Anyway, none of these ambitious plans coalesced, and with that time taken trying to find the right Z fighters to take this project head on, the popularity of Dragon Ball Z started to wane in the later half of the 2000s, or at least enough for Fox to get increasingly worried about its profitability. I myself must confess I had long stopped slaving away at my AMVs hosted on dbzlegacy.com. Stop showing it! Stop! Cut it out! And as Fox approached those late 2000s, and if you know anything about Hollywood filmmaking around that time, you might suspect what's coming next. Instead of the producers continuing their search for the perfect filmmakers, the looming writer's strike was about to go into effect, which rushed into production many other films circa around 2008. With this new cutoff point, Fox then had to settle for much less. And I present to you, much less. Dragon Ball was going to be written by one Ben Ramsey, who at that point only had the obscure and 90s shit The Big Hit as his only writing credit. In terms of directing and producing, well, here's where things get interesting. Did I say interesting? I meant extremely confusing. Well, it's both, really. Stephen Chow was then somehow brought aboard the project, which at first seemed like an inspired choice. His penchant for martial arts comedies was a perfect fit for the source material, but it quickly became apparent that his name was simply being used as a marketing strategy rather than him being a true creative force. force. We call this the Quentin Tarantino Presents effect. Now, when this new creative team was publicly announced, Fox played it coy on who would actually be sitting in the director's chair until it was eventually revealed that James Wong, a veteran writer/director of TV, as well as the Final Destination franchise, would be given that chair. In a statement, Stephen Chow said that he himself was a fan of Toriyama's work, saying that it's an airy and unrestrained story, which leaves much room for creation. Okay, that just seems like code for there's gonna be different shit in here, just letting you know. As for why he wasn't directing himself, well, because he felt that he should only direct things that he himself created. Fair enough, but tinfoil hat time, there's also the possibility he simply didn't want to work under those Fox producers on a rush script with a massively slashed budget. Because very quickly, changes started to happen, or evolutions. While initially announced as simply Dragon Ball, Evolution was tacked on because I don't have an answer for that. Just a cool word that Fox marketing thought kids would respond to?
Howdy do, fellow kids.
Changes very much then spread to the working script, as it's been reported that it was much more faithful to the source material and even featured well-loved fan-favorite character, the Ox King. Also, they planned to include Krillin as well. After some serious brainstorming though, Fox felt it was simply too expensive to realistically shoot, and asked for rewrites to reduce the scale and scope, a decision which would totally not turn out to be what happened material at all. Now, while Ben Ramsey did rewrites, apparently that still wasn't good enough, and James Wong himself also contributed quite heavily to the script. Akira Toriyama was also consulted, and when I say consulted, I mean ignored. He attempted to offer suggestions throughout the script writing process as well as during the actual filming, but several sources cited that these suggestions were never taken seriously. This, of course, would then cause huge ripples in the pool of time, which we will dip into a bit later. Casting apparently was also a bit of a to-do, with producers hoping to snag some big stars by attempting to maybe hide some facts about the production in order to get them to sign on the dotted line. Ron Perlman was sought to play Lord Piccolo with a lucrative offer, but dropped out at the last second, opting for red makeup instead of green, and filmed Hellboy 2: The Golden Army instead, which might have been the fastest anyone's ever dodged the biggest bullet ever. The part then went to James Spike Marsters, who was familiar with Dragon Ball and really relished doing the best possible job he could, given the material, the really bad material.
Defeat, Ozaru. When the blood moon eclipses the sun, you will become Ozaru.
Now, as for Goku, you can say a lot about the performance of Justin Chatwin, and believe me, people have, but one thing you can say about the guy is that he at least did his homework. In preparation for the role, he read volumes and volumes of the manga, watched a ton of the anime, and even went the extra mile to read Dragon Ball's inspiration, Journey to the West, so good on him. Unfortunately, when the script recasts Goku as a moody teenager who has to navigate high school bullies, go to parties, and has more interest in dating girls than training and fighting, well, he wasn't really playing Goku at all anymore. Now, while on the subject of Chatwin, the subject of his hair is never really far behind. Early tests had all the actors outfitted with over-the-top wigs to better mimic the original look of the characters. Apparently though, the effect was not satisfactory for the director, James Wong, who felt it best to keep the actors' hair as natural as possible, which explains that one aqua green streak in Emily Rossum's hair. Honestly, while many fans had issues with this, I really doubt the inclusion of wigs would have improved the movie's anything. Random changes like these permeated throughout the rest of the production. Master Roshi, for example, instead of being an elderly hermit living it up in a tiny tropical island, was played by the much younger Chow Yun-fat, who lived in a downtown apartment. Oh, but look, see, it kinda has a Hawaiian shirt on, so yeah, there's your nod, fans. Goku's Ozaru form, oh god. was a generic human-sized werewolf-like thing beast in the final film, and looked even worse during the initial filming until people with, I guess, eyes looked at it. All of these horrible decisions were likely due to keeping a more grounded and believable tone, I guess. You don't want to scare off the normies, while also having the added benefit of being really cheap. Now, in terms of last-minute decision-making, something that actually helped the movie was James Marsters taking a bit of creative liberty with Piccolo. The original approved makeup design had him looking far more human and strangely far more attractive. Now, since Marsters was a fan of Dragon Ball, once he got in the makeup chair, he worked with the main artist on set to change the look pretty dramatically, and fortunately, James Wong didn't fight this change and wound up being what you saw in the finished film, looking about as accurate as you could really hope for in a production like this. Now, as for the actual filming, as you can probably surmise, it was a bit rough, as a good chunk of it had to be filmed in an abandoned and unair-conditioned jeans factory in Durango, Mexico. Now, why was this so? Yep, you guessed it, it would save dramatically in terms of on-location filming. James Marsters recalled this particular phase of the production quite fondly. Yeah, they told me it was a $120 million picture and that Stephen Chow was producing. Stephen Chow, who did Kung Fu Hustle. So I get to Durango, Mexico, and it's a $30 million picture, and Stephen Chow was just on paper to fool us into getting down to Durango, Mexico. Chow Yun-Fat and I were cursing in the desert over this, like, son of a bitch!
Damn it!
So yeah, filming pretty much went like that. In fact, it went so well, they even decided to film some more. While originally scheduled to release in 2008, it somehow missed that date. I guess the editor or producers looked at it and decided reshoots were absolutely necessary. Now, while this is indeed common in a lot of productions, it does tend to occur in shows where the script becomes an issue. After said reshoots were completed, Dragon Ball Evolution was then set to under-deliver in theaters in March of 2009. Now, at some point during all of this, the idea was floating around and even planned that this was going to kick off an entire movie franchise, spawn shitloads of sequels despite, you know, all the massive fan backlash in regards to the everything. While it's unclear just how much planning had been done on future films, the post-credit scene of Evolution certainly and stupidly promised more, like many movies trying to exist well beyond their means. Leading into the actual premiere of Evolution, that same confidence, strangely, was nowhere to be seen. It was a film that Fox elected to not be screened for critics. Therefore, there would be no day one reviews to inform the audience about its quality. We've talked about this before on previous movie episodes of What Happened, as this is a common tactic studios employ when they know they have a massive stinker on their hands, and in this case, they had a massive stinker on their hands. Farting in with a 14% on Rotten Tomatoes, Dragon Ball made just $9 million in total in North America on a budget of $30, not counting marketing. Worldwide, however, it bottomed out at around $58 million, so it's safe to say that it likely didn't even post a profit. If there were any concrete plans to make sequels, then they were quickly final flashed off the face of the planet.
No, this isn't happening! There's no reason for me to go on. What am I fighting for?
James Wong never directed a motion picture again, opting to go back to TV, where he directed and wrote a few episodes of the X-Files revival. Ben Ramsey, for his part, formally apologized for the part he played in this whole disaster. I knew that it would eventually come down to this one day. Dragon Ball Evolution marked a very painful creative point in my life. To have something with my name on it as the writer be so globally reviled is gut-wrenching. To receive hate mail from all the world is heartbreaking. I spent so many years trying to deflect the blame, but at the end of the day, it all comes down to the written word on page, and I take full responsibility for what was such a disappointment to so many fans. I did the best I could, but at the end of the day, I dropped the Dragonball. I know what it's like to have something you love and anticipate be so disappointing. To all DB fans out there, I sincerely apologize. There is, of course, a silver lining to all of this. Since his experience helping develop the film was abjectly miserable and frustrating, it is what spurred Toriyama to return to the franchise that made him famous. This culminated in Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods, which was a big hit in Japan, and since it only needed to be dubbed and had a small theatrical run, was also a big hit for Funimation. This then led to all the subsequent films, and finally into Dragon Ball Super, which kicked off an entirely new and still ongoing saga. No, not that saga, get that shit out of here! So pretty much all these new Dragon Ball characters, storylines, lore, and games were simply birthed out of the desire to erase the memory of evolution from the collective subconscious of fans the world over. To not let this be the last image people see when they think of Dragon Ball. Toriyama even said as much. Dragon Ball once became a thing of the past for me, but after that, I got angry about the live-action movie, rewrote an entire movie script myself, and now I'm complaining about the quality of the new TV anime, so it seems that DB has grown on me so much that I can't leave it alone. If you know of any other games, movies, or anime adaptations that are ripe to be exposed on our stage, screen them out in the comments below, take a flying Nimbus cloud over to my Twitter, or instant transmit yourself into the Flophouse VIP Patreon and use the 7 magic balls to make your wish come true! See you next time, and thanks for watching.
Dragon, rock the dragon, Dragon Ball, sing the dragon, rock the dragon.